In this video, I'm going to show you how to send information from one view controller to another. And I'm going to create a very simple application with two view controllers. So my source view controller or view controller A will send information user selects to a view controller B, or in my case, I've called it display view controller. And the way my application will work is like this. When it starts, it will have a table view with two rows in it. One of them will be Swift Developer Blog and Apple.com. And when user clicks on it, information from table view from the selected cell will be sent to, will be passed on to view controller B, or display view controller, and we will load the selected web page. And if I select Apple web page will be loaded. Okay, so let's quickly do that. I will move this example up and stop my application. Okay, so I have an empty project, and it's absolutely empty project with only one view controller. And I'll start working with it. First of all, my view controller, I will embed it into navigation controller. So I'll embed it into navigation controller so that I have navigation bar at the top, and user can tap on it to go backwards from display view controller. Okay, and I will change the size to 4 inch so that I have enough space. Okay, and I will select the title and I will change it to URLs. Okay, now I will need to, from my objects library here, I will need to look for table, and I'll grab table view, drag and drop it here. And before I position it, I will go ahead actually, and I will hide the navigation bar for the moment. I will position my table view like this, just before the status bar. Okay, and I will also select couple of or one prototype cell, and so I'm under utilities attributes inspector, and I will have one prototype cell, and now I can add my navigation bar, or select invert like this, and I will also reset this to suggested constraints. Okay, almost done with my view controller. And by the way, this is the view controller which was created by default. So if I switch to identity inspector, the custom class for it is view controller. So done. And while we are on the main storyboard, let me find another view controller, and I'll drag and drop it here, and I will also resize it to iPhone 4 inch like this. So this will be our destination view controller, or display view controller, which will display the data. Okay, so let's go to our URLs view controller and make some changes. By the way, while we are here, let's select the cell. So if you open document outline here on the left side, this left panel, we want to select the prototype cell that we have, table view cell, and we will need to give it an identifier. So again, under the attributes inspector, for the selected cell, we will give identifier my cell. We will need it to dequeue this cell from the table view. Okay, now I will select the view controller, hide the left side panel, and open this view controller in Assistant Editor. And I will work with a table view. Well, first of all, we will need to create data that will be loaded to this table. And I will create two arrays. One of them will be called titles, and that will be an array with strings. The first will be Swift developer blog.com, which is my blog, and the second will be apple.com. Okay, so this for the titles, and the second will be for the URLs that will be loaded. So the first one will be Swift developer blog.com, and the second will be apple.com. http apple.com. Okay, so we have data that will be loaded, and to load this data we will need a Tableview Datasource. So we will need to make our class conform to a couple of protocols. So we will need to add UITableView Datasource, and we will need to add UITableView Delegate if we want to handle some of the events. Okay, and we have data source and delegates. Let's connect our table view. I will need to select the table view on the main storyboard, hold Control button on my keyboard, click on the table view, drag and drop it to this little orange circle and release it. And I will need to select data source and repeat this step, click, drag and drop for the delegate. So I need these two outlets created. So if I drag it again, I should see these points or bullet points next to my data source. Okay, so outlets are created, and we can start working with the table view. If you yes, I think it's command. If I hold command button on my keyboard and click on the table view data source, it will take me to the protocol, and I can look at the functions that I can implement to support this protocol. So I will need these two table view number of rows and sections, and I will need cell for row at index path. So I will copy them, go back and paste them at the bottom here. Okay, so I think I forgot function here. Did not copy it properly, so I will delete not needed information, like this is not needed, public is not needed, like this, and add function body. So the first one will return number of rows and sections, and we will have only two, and the best way to do it is like we will be displaying titles. So I will return titles count. So the more titles we have in an array, the more rows we will have displayed in our table view. And the other one, cell for row at index path, will return table view cell. So I will need to create a new variable. So I will I'll call it my cell. Let my cell equals table view dequeue reusable cell with identifier for index path. This one I will use to dequeue the cell. And remember, the identifier for our cell is called my cell. So to make sure I'm not mistaken, I will open up my left side panel, the document outline. I will select my cell, and under attributes inspector, I can look up the identifier. So it's my cell. Okay, I'll hide it, and I will put identifier my cell. Okay, and then index path is right here. Okay, so done. So we have our cell, and this function needs to return the cell we've created. So we will return it. Now, but the cell will be returned empty. Before we return a cell, we will need to set its title. So I will reference to my cell text label, and there will be text equals to titles. And so I will refer our array of titles, and I will use index path row. For each row, we will get a relevant title. So for row 0, because it's an array, the title with index 0 will be returned, which is Swift developer block. And for next row, a title Apple.com will be returned. Okay, so this is it. And I will also add one function from the Tableview Delegate, which will help us to see which cell did user tap. So I will hold Control button on my keyboard. Again, I'll hold Control button on my keyboard and click on the Tableview Delegate. And I will scroll down looking for did select a row at index path. So I want to copy this function, come back, scroll down and paste it here. Public function Tableview did select a row at index path. So and this function does not return anything. It simply triggers when user taps on a cell. And so inside of this function, what I want to do for the moment, I will simply print something like selected row equals, and then I will reference index path row. So now I know which row was tapped, and I'll also print, for example, something like selected title is, and I will also print the title. I will reference titles, array of titles, and I will reference index path row. Okay, so this should print out titles and selected row. Now let's run this application and see if we have everything, if we done everything correct and it's working before we continue. So I'll select iPhone 5, hit on run. Okay, so it's working. I have table view with two cells or two rows, and if I tap on Swift developer block, it says selected row 0, selected title is Swift developer block. And Apple.com is working as well. Very good. So now let's go back to our ViewController. Let's go back to our main storyboard, and we will begin working with the second ViewController. For that ViewController, we will need a custom class. So I will create a custom class, new file, Kakao Touch class, iOS source Kakao Touch class, text, and I will call it display ViewController, subclass of UIWebView. That's correct. Language Swift. Next. Create. Okay, I have my custom class. Now I will need to associate with this custom class with my user interface. So I'll go back to main storyboard, select this ViewController, open up Attributes Inspector, and switch to Identity Inspector here. And under custom class, I will type display ViewController, and then I will copy this value and I'll paste it for identity storyboard ID. I will want to use the same value. I mean, this value can be anything else, a custom value, but I like to use the same storyboard ID as the custom class. Okay, this is done, and I will look for a web view. Here it is, and I'll click and drag it and drop it here. This, and let me actually just a little bit below, and I will select ViewController and reset to suggested constraints. Okay, so ViewController is here. The custom class is assigned. I can hide my left side panel, hide the document outline, and I can open this display ViewController in Assistant Editor. Now, this ViewController will receive information from our first ViewController. And this information needs to be stored somewhere. So what information do we need to load to display URL? So we will need to accept the selected URL, and I will create a variable for that. So selected URL, and that's going to be a string for the time being. And I will also want this view controller to accept selected title, for example, and that will also be a string. Okay, so next I want this information to load every time when my view controller loads. So I will look for a function which is called view will appear, and I will call it super view will appear animated. Okay, so every time this view will load, I will need to check if, for example, selected title is not null. So I will use for that if let, if we'll call it title to display equals selected title. In other words, if selected title contains data, it will be assigned to title to display, and then I can set, for example, self navigation item title, the title of the window to title display. But at this moment it will be empty because we're not sending anything. So now let's go back to our let's go back to our URLs, to our original view controller, and we will work with the function didSelect row index path, because when user taps on a row, this function will be triggered, and this is when we want to send information to our next view controller. So our next view controller is called display view controller. So I'll create a variable display view controller, and to instantiate this variable I will need to reference the storyboard. Storyboard instantiate view controller with identifier, and the identifier for this view controller I will need to look up. So I will go to the view controller on the main storyboard, open up my right side panel, and I will, under the custom identity inspector, under identity storyboard, this is my identity storyboard ID that I need to use to instantiate this display view controller. So going back to my first view controller, and I'll paste this one here. Okay, so we have display view controller instantiated, but we will also need to cast it as display view controller. Okay, now when we have an instance of this view controller, we can set its selected title to the value of titles array of the row that user tapped on. And I will reference display view controller again, and I can see the selected URL as well, and I will set it to URLs. Is it URLs? Let me look up the, yes, the array is URLs, and it's going to also be index path row. Okay, and so we have the view controller. We've set its variables to the values that we want to pass, and now we want to push this view controller. So I will go to self navigation controller, push view controller, and that's going to be display view controller animated control. And I'm going to present this view controller to user. I'm going to take user to the display view controller. This is it. So let's run and see if our title is going to be set. our URL will be set, but it will not be displayed because we don't have a code that displays it. We will only see title that will be displayed, but let's make sure that title gets actually passed from one view controller to another view. Okay, my application is up and running, so I click on Swift Developer Blog and I'm taken to the web view, and I see that swiftdeveloperblog.com is the title of the page. Apple.com is here. Very good. Okay, so now let's stop this application and let's make WebView load our address. Okay, and I will also work with view will appear. So basically I need to check if selected URL is not empty. So I will use if let again, and I will create a new variable URL to load equals. So I'll say if selected URL contains value, it will be assigned to URL to load. And if so, inside of it, I will create my URL equals to an SURL. I will need to create an SURL out of this URL to load. Like this. I have URL to load, and now I will create a request, let my URL request, and that's going to be an SURL request equals an SURL request, and I will pass URL, and that's going to be my URL. Okay, we have request and we can now set it. So I will use we don't have an instance. There is no way for us to reference WebView unless we create an outlet for that. So I'll click on WebView, hold Control button, click, drag and drop here, and that will be an outlet. I'll call it my WebView. So now we can reference this WebView, and this is what I will do. My WebView load request, and that's going to be my URL request. This is it. So looks like everything is in place and it should work. Okay, so let's just hide this. Display view controller. I will clear constraints, make it all the way to the top, and reset suggested constraints, save, run, and see how it works. Okay, we have our application, so I click on Swift Developer Blog, and Swift Developer Blog is not loading. We get an error message. Oh yes, this is because of app transport security has blocked, because we're not using, we have missed something in our app info in our info list. And in the info list, we want to click on this plus button. If you select the very first row and then click on plus button, here you can tap app transport security settings, and you want to expand it, and then click on the plus again because this is an array, and select here allow arbitrary loads, and then choose a yes. So app transport security settings should have allow arbitrary loads set to yes, and this will allow your application to load external resources. Okay, so let's run it again. Swift Developer Blog. Hello. Yes, it's here. It's loaded. I'll go back to apple.com. Apple.com is loaded. Okay, so works. What's happening when user taps on a row, we read the value from the index row, and then we set the we create an instance of display view controller, and then we set the properties of this view controller to values that user selected from the view controller A, or initial view controller. This is it. I'm going to publish this video together with my blog post. And if you have questions, please do comment. I'll be happy to help you out and answer.